6-1. Today we're going to be talking about ratios. So the main two things that we're going to be doing in this lesson is writing a ratio in simplest form and being able to figure out if two ratios are equivalent or not. So let's go ahead and talk about those two things real quick. So first of all, you need to know what a ratio is. A ratio is a comparison of two quantities by division. So basically we're comparing them by making a fraction or dividing them. So there are three different ways that you can write a ratio. You can have it in fraction form, 3:4, or you can have it in this form with 3:4 or 3:4, or reading it as 3:4. But keep in mind that the order of them does matter. So if it says 3:4, you wouldn't want to put 4 over 3. Alright, so now what are equivalent ratios? Equivalent ratios are ratios with the same value. So basically ratios like 1/3 and 3/9 and 25/2 and 50/4, those two sets are both equivalent. Now there are two different ways that you can test to see if ratios are equivalent or not. The first way is to write them in simplest form. Because after you write the two ratios in simplest form, if they give you the same fraction, then they are equivalent. Like in this example, if we have 1/3, that's already in simplest form, and then 3/9, we put it in simplest form by dividing 3 out of it. We'll have 1/3. You'll see that 1/3 and 1/3, they're the same fraction, so that tells us that these two ratios are equivalent. Another way that you can test to see if two ratios are equivalent is by looking for a common multiplier. So by setting them up like 1/3 equals 3/9 and figuring out, well, how do I get to 1 to 3? We have to multiply by 3, so 1 times 3 gives me 3. And if I multiply the denominator by the same number, am I going to get the denominator? So like 1 times 3 gives me 3, and 3 times 3 gives me 9. So this shows me that since I can do that, that these two ratios are equivalent. Now let's go ahead and do some practice problems. Alright, for number 1, I split it up into two different parts. We have A and B because we're going to be using all of this information up here. So we're using information about a recipe. So in this specific recipe, you need 4 teaspoons of garlic powder, 6 teaspoons of oregano, and 2 teaspoons of pepper. So we're going to use that information to write these ratios in simplest form. So if it says the ratio for pepper to garlic powder, that means I need to look for how much pepper do I have. I have 2 teaspoons. And then how much garlic powder do I need, which is 4 teaspoons. So I have 2/4, and now I have to write it in simplest form. So I'm going to go ahead and divide out of 2. Divide out of 2, and I'm going to get 1/2. Or you can write it as 1 to 2 or 1 to 2. So either way, any way you write it like this, it's okay. So basically our ratio is 1/2. B, we're going to go ahead and write the ratio for oregano to pepper. So first of all, we need to figure out how much oregano do we need in our recipe, which is 6 teaspoons. So I'm going to write 6 over. Now I need to know how much pepper we need for our recipe, which is 2 teaspoons. So I'm going to write 6 over 2, and now I have to write it in simplest form. So I'm going to go ahead and divide out of 2, divide out of 2, and I'm going to have 3/1, or 3:1, or 3:1. Alright, so either any of those ways that you write it, it's okay as long as you have it in this form. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and try an example where we have to look at two ratios and see if they are equivalent or not. So we're going to go ahead and we can try it both ways, both of the ways that I told you about, and we'll figure it out. So first of all, we have 20 nails for 5 shingles and 12 nails for 3 shingles. We need to figure out if those two ratios are equivalent. So let's go ahead and write it as 20/5, and then we can write it as 12/3. Now, the first method I talked about was by putting them in simplest form. So I'm going to go ahead and put both of these ratios in simplest form, and if I get the same ratio after that in simplest form, then they are both equivalent. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and divide by 5. Divide by 5. I'm going to have 4/1, or 4:1. And now I'm going to go ahead and divide by 3. Divide by 3, and I'm going to have 4:1. So since these two ratios in simplest form are both equivalent, that tells us that the original ratios are equivalent as well. So the answer is yes, they are equivalent. Okay, let's go ahead and do another example like that for number 3. This time I'm going to do way number 2. So instead of simplifying them down to figure out if they're equivalent, I'm going to try to find a common multiplier. So we have 2 cups of flour to 8 cups of sugar, and 8 cups of flour to 14 cups of sugar. So So in order to do that second method, I'm going to set my ratios up as a proportion by using an equal sign. So if I have 2 cups of flour to 8 cups of sugar, and I have 8 cups of flour to 14 cups of sugar. So it's very important when you're setting them up that both of the numerators have the cups of flour and both of the denominators have the cups of sugar. Alright, so now I'm going to think, how do I go from 2 to 8? What do I need to do to 2? I need to go ahead and multiply it by 4. So I'm going to do 2 times 4, that will give me 8. And so this is the test. Now, if these two ratios are equivalent, then our 8 times 4 will give me 14. And in this case, 8 times 4 does not give me 14. So these are not equivalent. Alright, let's go ahead and look at our last example. It's a word problem. It says a community pool requires there to be at least 3 lifeguards for every 20 swimmers. There are 60 swimmers and 9 lifeguards. Are there the right number of lifeguards? So basically we're just going to go ahead and take these two ratios and see if they're equivalent or not, and that will tell us if, yes, we have the right amount or not. So first of all, we need 3 lifeguards for 20 swimmers, and we are going to see if our next ratio is equivalent. So they have 9 lifeguards on duty for 60 swimmers. So we need a test to see if these two ratios are equivalent or not. So I'm going to go ahead and use the common multiplier method. So how do I get from 3 to 9? I need to multiply by 3. So if these two ratios are equivalent, 20 times 3 will give me 60. And in this case, it does. So yes, they have the right amount of lifeguards. So yes would be our answer. And if they ever ask you to explain your reasoning, you can just say yes because they have a common multiplier of 3, or you could say yes because the simplest form of both of those ratios are equivalent, anything like that. Alright, so as always, make sure that you go ahead and rewind the video, watch it again if you have any questions. You can also go back into your textbook to look at some more examples that have already been done for you. And as always, bring your questions to class and we will answer those for everybody. And now let's go ahead and do some on-your-own questions. Alright, you have 6 problems to do for me. Numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 all use the information in the top left about the field trip, the number of students, the number of adults, and the number of buses. Now numbers 5 and 6, you need to tell me whether those two ratios are equivalent or not. Alright, good luck. We'll see what you get tomorrow.